The diplomatic chamber aboard the Nexus station hung in vacuum silence. 17 species had signed. Humanity had not. Ambassador Kira of the Valthene Consortium watched the human delegation through triple-layered observation glass, her secondary hearts beating an anxious rhythm against her carapace. 3 months of negotiation. 3 months of careful compromise. The Collective Defense Treaty would bind the galaxy's major powers against the Void Reapers, the extra-dimensional threat that had already consumed 4 star systems. Every species had made concessions. Every species had signed. Except one. The human representative, a woman named Chin with iron-gray hair and eyes like stone, sat motionless at the table. Her hands were folded. She had not moved in 17 minutes. The other human delegates flanked her like statues. Outside the chamber, 50 warships of the combined fleet waited for humanity's answer. Kira's communication implant chimed. Queen Cerethia herself, calling from the throne world. Kira's throat sacs constricted. They refuse? The Queen's voice carried centuries of authority. They have not spoken, Your Radiance. They simply wait. Then, we proceed without them. Activate Contingency 7. Kira's claws trembled. Contingency 7 meant isolation protocols. Humanity would be cut off from the galactic economy, their colonies blockaded, their ships turned away from every port. It was exile. It was slow death. Your Radiance, perhaps more time, 3 months IS time, Ambassador. We face extinction. We cannot wait for one species to decide if they wish to survive. The connection died. Kira approached the chamber's input console. Her claws hovered over the activation sequence for the isolation protocols. 17 signatures glowed on the treaty display. The 18th space remained dark. She thought of the human colonies she had visited during the negotiations. Strange places, chaotic and loud, but filled with a vibrancy that unsettled her. Children playing in reduced gravity. Markets selling food from a dozen worlds. Art that made no sense but somehow meant everything. She pressed the sequence. Alarms would sound on every human world within the hour. Ambassador Chen's eyes opened. She looked directly at the observation glass, directly at Kira, though she should not have been able to see through the polarization. Chen stood. She walked to the treaty document. For one desperate moment, Kira thought she would sign. Instead, Chen picked up the stylus and wrote a single word across the entire page: inadequate. The chamber erupted into chaos. The Krell delegation hissed in fury. The Morphid representative's color shifted to aggressive crimson. Only the Valthene remained silent, watching. Chen tapped the communication panel. You've drafted a treaty that assumes the Void Reapers think like you. They don't. You've created protocols for engagement, retreat, and resource allocation. You've planned for a war that will never happen the way you expect. Kira activated her own microphone. Then tell us. What have we missed? Everything. Chen's voice carried no heat, no anger. Just certainty. You're fighting yesterday's war. You're building defensive lines against an enemy that doesn't understand the concept of front lines. You're rationing resources for a conflict you think will last decades when it will be over in months. One way or another. The Krell commander, General Thax, slammed his foreclaw against his console. Then, what do you propose, human? We offer protection for your colonies. We offer technology sharing. We offer full integration into the defense grid. You offer nothing but refusal and criticism. Chin turned to face the observation glass again. We offer survival. But not this way. Kira felt her queen's presence through the communication net before she heard her voice. Queen Cerethia had entered the station. The most powerful ruler in the galaxy had left her throne world, crossed 3 sectors, and arrived in person. Protocol dictated that negotiations halt, that all representatives prostrate themselves in respect. But Chin did not move. She stood perfectly still, waiting. The chamber doors opened. Queen Cerethia entered, and the room transformed. She was massive, twice the height of any Valthene, her carapace inscribed with the victories of 1,000-year reign. Four royal guards flanked her, their ceremonial weapons humming with very real power. The other delegations dropped to their lowest positions of respect. The humans remained standing. Cerethia moved to the center of the chamber. You refuse our treaty. You reject our protection. You endanger your own species through stubbornness. Her voice resonated through communication nets across the station. Give me one reason I should not order the combined fleet to enforce compliance. Chen met the Queen's compound eyes. Because you're afraid. Silence. Absolute silence. No one had spoken to the Queen this way in 3 centuries. The guards' weapons powered up. Kira prepared for bloodshed. But Cerethia raised one claw, and the guard stilled. Explain. Every species in this room is afraid. Afraid of extinction. Afraid of the Reapers. Afraid of making the wrong choice. So you've made the safe choice. A treaty that protects you politically, that shares blame, that lets you say you tried everything when your worlds burn. Chen stepped closer. Humanity is afraid too. But we learned something in our own wars. Fear makes you careful. Terror makes you creative. You speak in riddles, Cerethia said. I speak in options you haven't considered. Your treaty creates a defensive perimeter around core worlds. The Reapers will ignore it. Your treaty establishes command hierarchies. The Reapers don't care about your chain of command. Your treaty allocates resources for a 5-year campaign. You don't have 5 years. Kira watched the Queen's posture shift. It was subtle, visible only to those who knew Velthine physiology. Cerethia was listening. What do you know that we do not? Chen opened her data pad. 6 days ago, humanity's Deep Space Monitoring Array detected anomalous readings in the Kessler Void. The Reapers aren't preparing for an invasion. They're already here. The treaty negotiations dissolved into panic. Species representatives shouted into communication devices. The combined fleet went to alert status. And in the center of the chaos, Queen Cerethia stood perfectly still, her compound eyes fixed on the human ambassador. You knew. You knew and you said nothing. We said plenty. You didn't listen. Chen pulled up sensor data, spreading it across the chamber's main display. Red markers appeared across 3 sectors. Dozens of them. These are incursion points. The Reapers have been establishing beachheads while you've been drafting treaties. Your defense perimeter is already behind enemy lines. General Thax studied the display, his anger shifting to something colder. This intelligence, how long have you possessed it? 72 hours. We've been analyzing attack patterns and movement vectors. Your treaty would have concentrated the combined fleet at exactly the wrong positions. You would have walked into a kill box. Chen highlighted 3 sectors. Here, here, and here. That's where they want you to gather your forces. That's where they'll hit hardest. Cerethia moved to the display. Her guards tensed, uncertain whether to protect her from the data or from the human who provided it. If what you say is true, we have already lost. We cannot defend every world. We cannot protect every system. No, Chen agreed. You can't. Not with your treaty. Not with your strategy. Then what? Kira heard her own voice, desperate and small. What strategy saves us? Chen looked at each delegation in turn. The one you'll hate. The one that requires you to trust us completely. The one where humanity doesn't sign your treaty because we need you to sign ours. She placed a different document on the table. It was shorter. Simpler. And as Kira read it, her secondary heart stopped beating. The human treaty had only 3 provisions. First, all species would provide complete military intelligence to a centralized human command. Second, all defensive positions would be abandoned. Third, the combined fleet would launch an immediate offensive into Reaper-controlled space. It was madness. It was suicide. It was everything the galactic powers had spent 3 months trying to avoid. General Thax was the first to speak. You expect us to abandon our worlds? To place our fleets under human command? To attack instead of defend? His voice rose. This is not strategy. This is extinction. That's what your strategy is, Chen said quietly. You just can't see it yet. The chamber erupted again. But through the chaos, Kira watched Queen Cerethia. The ancient ruler was reading the human treaty carefully, her claws tracing each word. When she finished, she looked at Chen with an expression Kira had never seen on the queen's face. Uncertainty. Why would this work? Cerethia asked. What do you know about fighting that we do not? Chen's face remained expressionless, but something flickered in her eyes. Memory, perhaps. Pain. We know about losing. Queen Cerethia stood at the observation window, watching the combined fleet drift in formation. Behind her, the treaty chamber had cleared. Every delegation had left to consult with their homeworlds, to analyze the human proposal, to calculate the odds of survival under either plan. Only Kira remained, and only because the Queen had commanded it. Your assessment, Ambassador. Kira chose her words carefully. The human proposal is tactically insane, Your Radiance. It violates every principle of defensive warfare. It abandons our strongest positions. It concentrates our forces in the most dangerous possible location. And yet you hesitate. Cerethia's voice carried no judgment, only observation. I have studied humanity for 3 years, Your Radiance. I have walked their worlds, spoken with their leaders, observed their culture. They are reckless and undisciplined. They ignore protocol. They question authority. They make decisions based on intuition rather than data. Kira's throat sacs contracted. But they have survived conflicts that should have destroyed them. Not through superior technology or greater numbers. Through something else. Something I do not fully understand. Adaptability, Cerethia said softly. We build systems, Ambassador. Structures that endure. Protocols that maintain order across centuries. Humanity builds nothing permanent. They change constantly, rebuild continuously, adapt to every threat. It makes them chaotic. It also makes them dangerous. Do you trust them, Your Radiance? The Queen turned from the window. No. But I trust their fear. They are terrified. I see it in Chen's eyes, hear it in her voice. She believes her species will die if we follow our plan. She believes everyone will die. Cerethia moved to the treaty document, the one humanity had offered. Fear makes species do 2 things, Kira. It makes them hide, or it makes them bare their teeth. Humanity is not hiding. What if they're wrong? What if their strategy fails? Then, we die weeks sooner than we would have otherwise. The Queen's claw touched the signing panel. But if they are right, if they have seen something we have not, then our own plan kills us with certainty. She pressed her claw to the panel, and her signature appeared in glowing Valthene script. Inform the delegations. The Valthene Consortium supports the human proposal. We will provide our complete military assets to their command structure. We will abandon our defensive lines. We will strike first. Kira felt her secondary hearts racing. Your Radiance, the other species will not follow. The Krell consider retreat dishonorable. The Morphids will never abandon their colony worlds. The Scent cannot conceive of offensive action against a superior force. They will refuse. Then, they will die in their positions, and the Reapers will consume them. Cerethia moved toward the chamber exit, her guards falling into formation. I have ruled for 1,133 years, Kira. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have watched species make every possible choice in the face of extinction. The ones who survive are not the strongest, or the smartest, or the most numerous. They are the ones who can change their minds. She paused at the door. Summon Chen. We have details to discuss. Ambassador Chen arrived without her delegation, without guards, without ceremony. She entered the chamber as if walking into her own home. It should have been insulting. Instead, it felt oddly appropriate. Cerethia gestured to the treaty document. I have signed. My fleets are yours to command. Now tell me the truth. What makes you believe this will work? Chen pulled up a holographic display. It showed human history, Centuries of conflict compressed into visual data. We've faced extinction 17 times in our recorded history. Plague, climate catastrophe, nuclear war, artificial intelligence uprising, nanoswarm event. We shouldn't have survived any of them. We survived all of them. Not because we were ready. Because we learned to act before we were ready. That is not strategy, Sarithia observed. That is desperation. Yes. Chen's expression hardened. And desperation teaches lessons that safety never can. When you have time to prepare, you build defenses. You create fallback positions. You plan for every contingency. But the Reapers don't give you time. They move faster than you can respond. Every defense you build, they've already bypassed. Every contingency you plan for, they've made irrelevant. So you plan not to plan? Kira asked. That makes no sense. No. We plan to decide. There's a difference. Chen expanded the display. Your treaty took 3 months to draft because every species needed guarantees. Guarantees about territorial integrity, about resource allocation, about command authority. You were negotiating a document that would survive political challenges across a dozen governments. You were building something permanent. And you? Sarithia asked. We built something functional. Our treaty doesn't guarantee anything except unified action. It doesn't promise to protect every world because that's impossible. It doesn't establish complex command hierarchies because those slow down response times. It gives humanity operational command not because we're superior but because someone has to make decisions, and you've proven you can't do it quickly enough. The Queen's claws tapped against her carapace, a sign of deep consideration. You speak of speed. But offensive action against a superior force is not speed. It is suicide with momentum. Only if you fight the way they expect. Chen pulled up the Reaper incursion points. You've been studying the Reapers for months. You've analyzed their movements, their tactics, their technology. What have you learned about their decision-making? Kira answered before thinking. They have no central command. Each Reaper unit acts independently. They coordinate through some form of shared awareness we don't understand. Traditional command structures don't exist in their forces. Exactly, Chen said. No command structure. Which means no command vulnerabilities. You can't cut off their head because they don't have one. You can't disrupt their communications because they don't use communications. Every unit is autonomous. She highlighted several Reaper movements. But look at the pattern. Complete independence, yet perfect coordination. How? Sarithia leaned closer to the display. Shared programming. They are machines following identical instructions. No. They adapt too quickly for pure programming. They respond to novel situations in creative ways. They learn. Chen pulled up combat footage from the fallen systems. Watch this engagement. The Pethrak Defense Force used quantum mines. Worked perfectly the first time. Destroyed an entire Reaper vanguard. Second time? The footage showed Reapers flowing around the mines like water around rocks. They learned in real time and shared that knowledge instantaneously. Then, they cannot be defeated, General Thax said from the chamber entrance. He had returned without announcement, drawn by the discussion. If they learn from every engagement and share knowledge perfectly, every victory we achieve teaches them how to defeat us next time. That would be true, Chen agreed. If we fought them conventionally. If we gave them time to learn and adapt. But we're not going to do that. She pulled up a new star chart. We're going to hit every incursion point simultaneously. We're going to overload their ability to process information. And we're going to do it before they realize we know where they are. The strategy unfolded across the display. Humanity had identified 43 Reaper incursion points. The combined fleet would split into 43 strike groups. Each group would hit their target at exactly the same moment, across 3 sectors, overwhelming the Reapers' distributed intelligence with simultaneous combat data from dozens of different fronts. They learn fast, Chen said. But they have to learn. There's processing time, analysis time, adaptation time. If we compress all our engagements into a 3-hour window, they can't adapt fast enough to all of them at once. 3 hours? Kira felt her air sacs constrict. You expect us to defeat an extra-dimensional invasion force in 3 hours? No. I expect us to cripple their forward positions in 3 hours. Cut off their beachheads. Prevent them from establishing larger portals. Force them back through the incursion points before they can stabilize their presence in our dimension. Chen's voice remained level, but her hands were shaking. We don't have to win the war. We just have to win the first battle so decisively that there isn't a second one. General Thax studied the strike group formations. His military experience showed in the way his eyes tracked force distributions, support logistics, fallback positions. Or rather, the lack of them. You have no reserves. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier is committed to the initial strike. If this fails, there is no second chance. If this fails, there is no second chance anyway. Chen said. Your defensive treaty creates the illusion of safety. Multiple fallback positions, strategic reserves, long-term sustainability. But the Reapers have already bypassed your primary defense line. Your reserves would become scattered groups trying to defend isolated worlds. Your strategic depth would become strategic death, one system at a time. Queen Cerethia had been silent, absorbing the plan. Now she spoke, and her voice carried the weight of centuries. You are asking me to gamble the survival of my species on a single coordinated strike. You are asking me to abandon every world outside the primary targets. You are asking me to trust human command when humanity itself is the youngest species at this table. She moved to stand directly before Chen. Give me one reason. Not tactical analysis. Not strategic theory. One reason from your heart why I should believe this will work. Chen met the Queen's compound eyes. Because it's what we'd do if we were alone. If every species in this room refused to act, if humanity faced the Reapers with only our own fleets, this is exactly what we would do. Not because we're brave. Because we have no other choice that leads to survival. That is not comfort, Cerethia said softly. No, Chen agreed. It's not. But it's truth. The Queen stood motionless for 17 seconds. Then she turned to General Thax. You have tactical concerns. Voice them. Many, Your Radiance. Strike group composition assumes mixed species crews. Our forces have never trained together. Communication protocols are incompatible. Tactical doctrines conflict. The Krell favor close assault. The Valthene prefer ranged engagement. The Synth use bioweapons our own forces cannot survive exposure to. The Morphids phase shift in combat, which interferes with Krell targeting systems. He gestured at the display. This plan requires perfect coordination between forces that have never fought together. Then we train them, Chen said. We have 6 days before the Reapers expand their beachheads enough to stabilize full invasion portals. 6 days to integrate 17 species military forces into functional strike groups. Impossible, Thax said flatly. It takes months to achieve operational integration. It takes months when you're trying to build something permanent. We're building something functional. Strike group commanders get tactical autonomy. They use their own species' strengths however they see fit. We're not making you fight like humans. We're making you fight alongside humans. There's a difference. Kira watched General Thax process this. His military mind was warring with his military training. Everything he had learned said this couldn't work. Everything he was seeing said it might be the only thing that could. What role would the Krell forces play? First wave on every target, Chen said immediately. Krell heavy assault breaks their forward lines. Valthene ranged units provide covering fire and target priority. Synth bioweapons deploy after Krell penetration, while Morphids phase strike their support structures. Humanity coordinates and adapts in real time, shifting priorities as situations develop. You make it sound simple. I make it sound possible. Simple died when the Reapers arrived. General Thax looked at Queen Cerethia. Some unspoken communication passed between them, the understanding of warriors who had seen too many battles. Thax turned to Chin. If I agree to this, if the Krell commit their fleets, you must understand our nature. We do not retreat. We do not withdraw. If you place Krell soldiers in those strike groups, they will fight until they win or die. There is no third option. I understand, Chin said quietly. And I promise you this. If we send your soldiers to die, we'll die right beside them. Humanity won't be commanding from safe distance. We'll be in the first wave too. Something shifted in Thax's posture. Respect, perhaps? Or recognition of shared understanding. Then, the Krell will sign your treaty, human. And we will show the Reapers what it means to face warriors who know no fear. We're all afraid, Chin said. But we'll fight anyway. Other delegations began returning to the chamber. Word had spread that the Valthene and Krell had committed to the human plan. The morphid representative materialized from phase space, their form flickering between visible and invisible. The sent delegation arrived in their environmental suits, the bioluminescent patches on their bodies pulsing with agitation. Species after species entered, drawn by the impossible possibility that humanity had found a path forward. The treaty chamber filled with voices, arguments, calculations. Kira watched it all from her position beside the Queen. She had served Cerethia for 70 years, but she had never seen her monarch take a risk like this. The Queen had always been the steady force, the careful calculator, the voice of measured response. Now she had signed away her caution in favor of desperate action. The Pethrak delegation arrived last. They had lost 2 colony worlds to the Reapers already, lost them while other species debated treaty language. Their representative, an elderly female named Korthra, moved slowly to the center of the chamber. She said nothing. She simply placed her claw on the human treaty and signed. No speech. No explanation. Just action. One by one, the other species followed. The Morphids signed, their phase signature appearing as a shimmer rather than script. The Scents signed, their bioluminescent marker glowing in the document. 17 species had refused to sign humanity's treaty 3 hours ago. Now 16 of them signed willingly. Only the Telvan Collective held back. Their representative, a crystalline being named Shard of Dawn, remained at the chamber's edge. I cannot sign this without consensus from the collective. Our decision-making requires full agreement across all nodes of our distributed consciousness. This process takes time. Chin turned to face them. How much time? Minimum? 14 days. The Reapers will have stabilized their portals in 6. Chen's voice held no anger, just statement of fact. Your world will be gone in 9. That may be true. But we cannot abandon our nature. Consensus is what defines us. Without it, we are not Telvan. We are merely individual shards, broken and incomplete. Queen Cerethia moved toward Shard of Dawn. I understand. The Valthene value structure, continuity, endurance. We build institutions that last millennia because permanence is sacred to us. By signing this treaty, I have violated principles my species has held for thousands of years. I have abandoned our defensive doctrine. I have placed our survival in the hands of another species. I have done this not because these things are right, but because they are necessary. She gestured to the treaty. You may die as Telvan, complete and consensus-bound. Or you may live as something new. The choice is yours. Shard of Dawn's crystalline structure pulsed with internal light, visible patterns of thought racing through their form. The Telvan collective was arguing with itself in real time, playing out the debate in bioluminescent flashes. Finally, the light settled. I will sign as Shard of Dawn, individual delegate. This violates our consensus protocol. I will likely be expelled from the collective for this action. They moved to the treaty. But I will be expelled and alive. 16 signatures became 17. Chin watched the final signature appear, and for the first time since entering the chamber, she allowed herself to breathe. Thank you. All of you. Now we have work to do. She pulled up the operational timeline. 6 days to integrate forces, establish strike groups, and position the combined fleet. I need senior military commanders from each species and tactical planning within the hour. I need complete sensor data from all your monitoring stations uploaded to the shared intelligence network immediately. And I need every ship capable of combat ready to move in 72 hours. General Thax stepped forward. Where do you want the Krell commanders? Strike group formations. You'll work directly with Valthene tactical officers to coordinate the first wave assault patterns. We need your experience in close combat combined with their precision targeting. And humanity's forces? Distributed across all groups. Every strike group gets human tactical coordinators and adaptive response units. We're not leading from behind. We're embedded with everyone. The chamber transformed into a command center. Holographic displays materialized everywhere. Species representatives pulled up their force dispositions, their sensor networks, their technological capabilities. Kira watched the chaos coalesce into structure. It was nothing like the careful, methodical planning of the original treaty negotiations. It was faster, rougher, more improvisational. It was human. Queen Cerethia stood beside her. You're wondering if we've made the right choice. I know we've made the only choice available, Your Radiance. I just wonder if it will be enough. So do I, Ambassador. So do I. The next 6 days were like nothing the galaxy had ever experienced. The combined fleet, which had never operated as a unified force, suddenly had to become one. Training exercises that should have taken months were compressed into hours. Mixed species crews that couldn't communicate had to find ways to coordinate. Tactical doctrines that conflicted had to merge into functional protocols. It should have been impossible. Perhaps it was. But they did it anyway. Kira found herself in the training bay of the Krell flagship Bloodied Honor, watching Krell assault troops practice boarding maneuvers with Valthene support teams. The Krell moved like living weapons, all aggression and violence. The Valthene provided covering fire with mathematical precision, calculating angles and trajectories while the Krell tore through simulated Reaper positions. It was brutal. It was elegant. It worked. General Thax approached her, his scales still steaming from combat simulation. Your queen has given us permission to die well, Ambassador. The Krell are grateful. I don't want you to die at all, General. That is the difference between Valthene and Krell. You seek survival. We seek glory. But perhaps, for once, we can achieve both. He gestured to the training bay. The humans understand us. They placed us in positions where our nature becomes strength rather than weakness. That is wisdom I did not expect from such a young species. Kira watched the mixed teams running another drill. They'd been fighting their entire existence, General. Fighting themselves, fighting their environment, fighting their own nature. They've learned to adapt because they had no choice. Then, perhaps the Reapers chose the wrong galaxy to invade. Thax said. Any place that produces humanity is a dangerous place indeed. The 6 days passed like fever dreams. Kira barely slept. No one did. The Reapers didn't wait for rest breaks, and neither could they. She watched human tactical coordinators work 20-hour shifts, then collapse for 3 hours before returning. She saw Queen Cerethia personally overseeing the integration of Valthene fleet elements into strike group formations, making decisions in minutes that would normally require days of deliberation. She observed General Thax drilling his troops until they moved like extensions of a single will. And she saw Ambassador Chen, always at the center of it all, coordinating between species, resolving conflicts, adapting plans in real time. The human never stopped moving, never stopped working. Kira approached her on the 5th day, finding Chen alone in an observation bay, staring at the assembled fleet. You should rest, Kira said. I will. After. Chen didn't look away from the display. Beautiful, isn't it? 17 species who couldn't agree on basic treaty language, now flying in formation. It shouldn't be possible. Many things shouldn't be possible. Your entire plan shouldn't be possible. No. It shouldn't. Chen finally turned to face her. I'm terrified, Ambassador. Absolutely terrified that I've convinced you all to follow a plan that will kill everyone. Terrified that I've misread the situation, miscalculated the odds, missed some critical factor. Then, why push forward? Because being terrified means I might be wrong. Being certain would mean I'd stop thinking. Chin pulled up the tactical display. Tomorrow, we either save the galaxy or doom it. Either way, we'll know. The fleet moved into position at 0400 hours, Galactic Standard Time. 43 strike groups, each one a carefully balanced mix of species and capabilities. Each one targeted at a specific Reaper incursion point. Each one dependent on perfect timing to make the plan work. Kira was aboard the Valthene flagship Eternal Threshold, part of Strike Group 12. Queen Cerethia had insisted on leading her forces personally, and Kira would not leave her side. Ambassador Chen's voice came through the fleet-wide communication net. All strike groups, this is Human Command. You are in position. You are ready. You are the finest warriors 17 species can field, and you are about to face an enemy that believes it cannot be defeated. A pause. Show them they're wrong. All groups, weapons free in 30 seconds. Good luck. The countdown began. Kira watched the tactical display, watched 43 strike groups hover at the edge of engagement range. She thought of her homeworld, of the hatchlings being raised in the spawning chambers, of the future that might not exist if this failed. She thought of humanity, the strange, reckless species that had convinced them all to bet everything on a single moment. The countdown reached 0. 43 strike groups attacked as one. The galaxy held its breath.